Greetings everyone, I'm Mar. Once again, this is my opinion, as you can tell from the title up there. Coming at you with another episode of Everybody Loves Raymond being reviewed. This, of course, is Season 8, Episode 16, Security. And this one, of course, came out the day before my birthday 20 years ago. Probably the reason I actually remember to watch this one. Now, this is Security. This is about Robert trying a side hustle. He's succeeding at it, and he's contemplating maybe retiring from his law enforcement job and going into this full time. Now, as the episode begins, we find out that Robert has been moonlighting, selling security equipment on the side. So, you know, like ADT, all that stuff that you put into your houses that someone tries to break in, it sets off the alarm. And he's made a lot of good sales. Now he starts throwing the pitch at Ray and Deborah. And at first they're doing their usual thing about they're trying to dodge it, and of course Ray doing his usual quips, yeah, we'll take the sign. But they eventually give in, and Robert sells them to it, and he starts putting it in. And this is when Amy drops the whole thing about Robert being a very persuasive salesman, like his third or fourth sale that week. And Robert mentions he'd actually had a conversation with his boss. Now, it's a fictional company, so they go ahead and start talking about it like, oh, King Second Sound? Oh, no, his son, Bobby. Or Ricky, excuse me, Ricky. And the reason that Robert brings up this conversation is because his boss brought up, like, hey, so you're doing such a good job, even though you're only doing it part-time. Maybe we should switch you to full-time. Now, of course, in order to do that, Robert would have to retire from the force. Now, I say retire instead of quit like the last time he was going to leave it, is because at this point in the show, he's over his 20 years. And the reason I say that is because back in Season 6, Marie said that Robert was a year away from not being a police officer. So, a year away from his minimum 20 and then retire, which would have been sometime previous season. So here he would have been in his 21st one. Now, of course, Robert's on the fence about whether he wants to retire yet, even though he's at or after his 20 years, and he's asking everybody. Now, given how Marie was back in the Lucky Suit episode, we all know what she's going to jump on. She's going to jump on, yes, you should retire, yes, yes, and that's her position throughout the whole episode. And of course, with her position, she has one of the best lines in the episode, and it's actually used in the promo. That's why I remember it. We can't have policemen running around Frank's age, which Frank in this episode would have been in his 60s and into his 70s, which is true. But I have met some policemen that are older. I don't know if they're that old, but older, like around Frank's age. So it does happen. Just like in the military, those generals that have been in their 40 years, they get up there in age and all that. But even with that, it's like, at this point, Robert's just about to hit his 50s. That's like normal-ish for like an officer that's been in there over his 20 years, especially if he joined right out of high school. But then again, the age thing's not really lining up with if he's 40 in Season 1, so he probably waited a few years, then joined after high school. Now, even with that, Robert is still on the fence, and everyone's going back and forth on it. Now, Amy, even though she says she wants Robert to make the decision and she wants him to be happy about it, it seems like she doesn't mind pushing that she wants him to stay a cop. And it seems to be mainly to spite Marie, because Marie is going so pro-retire. Now, with how Amy and Marie were close in the early seasons, this seems like a little bit of a weird little for them to be at. But considering all the stuff Amy has seen in those years, especially the end of Season 3, and the stuff she's seen Marie pull since she officially became a member of the family at the end of last season, need I bring up the whole gift debacle with the thank you notes at the beginning of this season? That kind of rests my case there. Now, everyone else kind of goes in their own opinions with it. At first, Frank is siding with Marie, which is a little odd because usually he'd side with someone else, but it's the same reasons as before, and you know, she's the one who makes his meals. Deborah seems to be going a little bit there, but also with that little asterisk. Ray doesn't seem to be giving an opinion. The interesting thing happens once we skip ahead and we get the in-laws' perspectives, because the little plot here is that it is also Robert's birthday week, and they're going back and forth of where they're going to hold it. Marie says she's going to have it at her house with her cake, and then once she and Amy start heads, Amy's like, we're going to have it at our house. And some more little snide comments between them, mainly from Marie. Okay, we'll have two, that one and the official one. In real life, that should be the moment where Robert stands in and says, excuse me, Marie, the one that my wife holds is the official one. Then again, without that, we wouldn't have no show. And it's stuff I harp on every now and then, bringing it up, but you know, I have to address it in an episode where it is relevant. Now the party ends up being at Ray's, and when they're all doing the back and forth discussion again, that's when the in-laws show up, and both of them have a different opinion. Hank feels that Robert shouldn't retire just yet, and part of it is because he likes being able to tell people that his son-in-law is a policeman. You know, it's like a icebreaker or something to bring up in conversation when he's out with, I guess, people they know in town, like other members of the congregation. And of course, Pat feels that he should retire because, you know, being a policeman is a dangerous job, which is true. And, you know, it should be like, since he's now married, maybe you should look into a safer line of work. Totally ignoring the fact that Amy feels that Robert should do it only if it's what he wants, not the other stuff. And she starts arguing her point, and I hate how Pat gaslights her right here. This is so typical gaslighting from a parent, and just from how we've seen it, I think part of it is also a little bit of their religious background kicking in here, where she's like, you're raising your voice. We don't do that. I couldn't help but mumble when I saw that. Fuck you, Pat. And that's what I'll say this to the character right there. Fuck you, Pat. Not to the actress, of course. You know, Georgia does a good job selling it there to where you really hate her character's gaslighting. So there's that. Ray eventually interjects as the conversation keeps going round and round, even though Frank eventually does switch who he supports. He starts going against Marie and tells Robert he shouldn't retire. He should remain a cop. Or as he interjects, you know what, maybe, you know what, you should be a motorcycle cop. Well, Ray takes Robert downstairs, and after kicking Marie out of the basement, he's like, what do you want to be? It's your move. You know, bringing up where Robert's like, hey, even though with all this, the first big decision you made after high school was becoming a cop. So there's that. Do you want to stay a cop, or do you want to go into alarm salesman? And Robert decides he's going to remain a cop, even though when he tells Marie, he kind of passes the responsibility buck over to Ray, which even though most of it's off camera, you can imagine that does not please Marie with how she walks down the stairs to most likely yell at Ray and probably give him one good smack across the face. But as you can hear from how I'm gushing about it, this is another fun episode. It's a concept that could have worked in an earlier season as well, but I think this works better this late in the show because we got the extra dynamic of Robert and Amy finally being married, the other in-laws being thrown in, and even though they're not in there other than like a couple gags with the little subplot involving the alarm, which that's something I haven't talked about yet, and that is that the alarm model that Robert sold them is known to be a little faulty, and it keeps activating falsely. You know, they keep trying to do stuff. The twins figure out the range, or times it keeps going off, and it leads to Robert punching it at one point, and then that doesn't fix anything. And then Frank pulls it off the wall, and he's like, that was easy. I should have married this. It's a nice little subplot there. But it's another fun episode in this season. I mean, this is an episode that shows that even though this show is now a little bit past its prime, there is still some gas in the tank, and it's not like one that's hanging on far too long. It's just one of those ones that, you know, as the show gets longer, you have to throw some new stuff in, and of course with the marriage, they got some new stuff in there. And of course Tucker Colley's able to draw some more juice out of that grapevine, and the result is this episode. It's another fun episode. Definitely one of the better ones of the season. Whether it's going to make the VHS list, we'll see, more than likely. Now the next one, it's going to be another episode I also saw during the first run. It's an interesting one that could have been any time in the show. Like I always like to say that. But I think, since you're allowed to throw you're allowed to throw Amy in a little bit more here. It works later, and of course also allows for more time to pass between Ray and his college days for it to work, and that of course is going to be the ingrate. Until then, everybody.